age of naturally aspirated V12 engines has quietly rumbled towards its inevitable end. These unapologetically raw, air-breathing, fire-spitting 12-cylinder monsters have been steadily replaced by downsized, turbocharged, and hybrid alternatives. Now, only one remains, and no one is sure for quite how long.
Well, I suppose we better enjoy it while we got it. Be rude not to. Oh, yes! This is the Ferrari 12 Cilindri. 12 meaning 12 and Cilindri meaning cylinder, and the name speaks volumes.
This is the latest in a line of V12 flagships. It's the replacement for the 812 Superfast, which itself replaced the FF, 599, and numerous other Berlinettas dating back to as far as the 1940s, all of which share the same simple formula. Big NA V12 engine up front, tyres begging fruitlessly for mercy at the rear.
There were some doubts about whether the 812 Superfast would be the final Ferrari GT with a naturally aspirated V12, but I think we can clearly see we can put those doubts to bed. This thing is carrying the torch single-handedly with a brand new updated engine, a new chassis, a new transmission, new technology, and that signature sound. Come on!
So, what's new for this latest £330,000 evolution? Well, a better question might be, what's old? The engine is a throwback, certainly, but the retro-inspired design looks backward in order to bring the brand forward. Ferrari say the design is inspired by the legendary Grand Tourers of the 1950s and 60s and is focused around simple, harmonious lines with sportiness and class in its silhouette. But this is the sort of car that visually might take some getting used to.
Is it pretty? No, certainly not in this color, which looks like it came out the wrong end of a baby. I don't think it does this car any favors. In fact, Ferrari say they want their customers to be quite, and I quote, bewildered by the looks of this car before then eventually coming around to love it when they learn the reasons behind their styling decisions.
They've tried to simplify things. With the 1,000 horsepower SF90 being the company's performance flagship, Ferrari felt the 12-cylinder didn't need to convey flagship status through a wild design, so it expresses its purpose in a more subtle manner. They've deliberately avoided giving it a facial expression with no rounded headlights for eyes or a grille for a mouth, instead referencing space-age design, but with a definite connection to history. The polycarbonate strip across the front, which can only be finished in black, harks back to the Ferrari 365 Daytona. The razor-thin DRLs that visually flow towards the air outlets behind the wheels also mimic the Daytona's chrome bumpers.
Maybe coolest of all though, we have a cofango, which is a combination of Italian words which are cofano and parafango. It basically means we have ourselves a big, lovely clamshell. And what a clamshell. I love the way that it actually reveals the tires when you open it and also presents that V12 in all of its glory. And I love the fact that you can see it's a mid-front engine design. Most of the engine lives behind the front axle. I'm sorry, I've got to close this. I'm getting way too excited.
Equally eye-catching, albeit in a different way, is the cab back design. It's incredibly long, with the cabin in a completely different postcode to the tip of the nose, although the muscular haunches do their best to break up the length. Towards the rear, we find an oversized diffuser, flanked by a pair of busy-looking exhaust tips, and even more striking, the C-pillar continues up and over the roof in body color. The rear glass having black extensions on either side, giving it the shape of a delta wing. But these aren't just for show. They are active aerodynamic spoilers that deploy to add downforce between 60 and 300 kph when cornering or braking.
The interior, I really rather like. I love the fact that it's got these two distinct cockpit areas, one for the driver and one for the passenger, so each of the occupants feels really quite special. One thing I don't like though about this particular car is the seats Look at this, it's finished in this very interesting green color, which I don't think really goes with the exterior color. And as I've said, I'm not a big fan of the exterior color, but you can spec it in whatever color you like. As for the rest of it, really rather good. You got this huge 15-inch display right in front of the driver, really bright, really clear, looks fantastic. You've also got this 10-inch display right in the center, which runs Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and it looks really good. It's really responsive and it is full of features. Thirdly, this 8-inch display for your passenger is a thing of beauty. It allows them to feel involved with the driving experience. For example, it can show things like your revs, your G-force. It lets them activate their massaging seats and adjust various settings. It's really cool. Downsides about this car, some build quality concerns, I think. If you have a close look at this 8-inch display, for example, you might just see that there's a gap at the top of the screen. And yeah, I mean, that's not very becoming, is it? Also, the badge, the 12 Cilindri badge, is on a bit wonky. It's higher on the left than it is at the right. I'm going to give Ferrari the benefit of the doubt on this one and say that these are pre-production cars and that hopefully the final models will be sorted out, but once you see it, you can't unsee it. So what's the thing actually like to drive? First impressions, wide and long. Honestly, it's very difficult to tell where the front of the car ends, and even the sides, it seems to fill the lane massively. You got to be very careful about touching a bit of grass or drifting over towards the center line. Back to the engine, that's this car's unique selling point. That's what makes this car feel so special. 6.5 litre NA V12, no turbos, no hybrids, just rage. It's basically the same engine as the 812 Competizione, so it makes 830 horsepower at 9,250 RPM and 678 newton meters of torque at 7,250 RPM. And those are big numbers. The biggest number of all, though, is the fact that it redlines at 9,500 RPM. That's 500 more than a 911 GT3 RS, for goodness sake. We got to talk about the sound, because this car has two of the essential ingredients you need to make an exceptional noise. It's a V12 and it doesn't have any turbos. So does it sound good? Well, maybe it doesn't sound quite as good as you might expect, because the year is 2024 and Ferrari has had to adhere to all types of limitations in order to make this car road legal. The sound limit in this thing is 74 decibels, which, believe it or not, is about the same as a washing machine. However, Ferrari have given it a couple of extra bits to enhance the noise.
They've given the car equal length exhaust headers, and they've given it resonators, pipes from the engine bay that send sound directly into the cabin. So even if it doesn't sound quite as epic as it should on the outside, it does at least sound reasonably nice on the inside. You be the judge.
I think the acceleration makes the sound more enjoyable than it actually is. This thing is very quick. 0 to 62 in 2.9 seconds, 0 to 124 miles an hour in 7.9 seconds, and flat out, you'll be doing 211 miles an hour.
You may have noticed those figures are identical to the 812 Superfast, all whilst this car actually has 40 Newton meters less torque, but there is a small but significant difference in the way the car delivers its torque. They've implemented a technology called torque shaping.
What's that all about? Well, in a nutshell, it delays the arrival of peak torque to ensure that the torque curve is more linear and more progressive. It makes it a smoother line rather than giving you all the torque when you might least expect it. What's really noticeable is the fact that it seems to make third and fourth gear seem to last longer and makes the acceleration feel more vivid in those gears rather than you feeling like you're running out of torque as you get up the box. And speaking of the box, it is one of the best in the business. It is so snappy. I mean, Ferrari always have rapid gearboxes, but the 8-speed DCT in this, it's like firing a pistol or cracking a whip. There's nothing else like it on the market, up and down. It's lightning quick, ultra responsive. I've never felt anything like it.
The brakes, meanwhile, are consistent, strong, with good feel, and a pedal that never goes long due to it being brake-by-wire.
The steering in this car is interesting, lightning fast. I mean, you'd expect that. It is a Ferrari, but this is especially quick. And it can catch you out, especially given how wide the car is. And you've got to be super careful about applying even the tiniest amounts of lock, because you can end up in the wrong lane or in a tree.
Part of that is because of the 20mm reduction in wheelbase, and partly because of the rear wheel steering, virtual wheelbase 3.0, which makes the car feel incredibly direct.
And the way that the rear wheel steering works is actually quite fascinating in itself. It only turns the back wheel that's loaded up. For example, if you're going through a right-hand bend, the wheel that's loaded will be your left rear. If you go through a left-hand bend, that will switch to being your right rear. The reason being that the unloaded wheel can stay neutral in preparation for a direction change. And it is really effective. This thing is so agile. Maybe too agile.
Either way, it's exciting. It's a GT, but it's also a Ferrari with all the driver involvement, cornering athleticism, and near-the-limit excitement you'd expect. It puts its power down well, but will forgive you with exceptional balance if you're enthusiastic with your throttle application. Bottom line, it's fun when it wants to be. Once you get over the size of the thing, with more predictable dynamic behavior than the 812, it still excites. It's a wonderful car to drive, a clear improvement on those that came before it.
There are two ways of looking at the 12 Cilindri. The first way is that Ferrari have got it wrong. They're being stubborn. They're not following what everyone else has done and they've made a mistake. Or there's the other way of looking at it, that Ferrari are giving the people what they want. They're sticking it out to the bitter end, giving us the thrills and spills that petrol heads demand.
The looks might be questionable, the power might be down on some of the competition, but none of its rivals deliver in quite the same way this car can. It's an absolute joy and a privilege to drive, and when the day comes when cars like this inevitably disappear from the automotive landscape, the world will never be the same. Until then, this, the venerable V12's last stand, is a piece of utter magic.